I think one of the things when you're out in the desert or areas of wildness, which might be a better way of putting it, silence is a really interesting concept. It's not that you're not hearing stuff, but it's just a completely different experience than being surrounded by sound. I mean, you know, I have experienced what people would call the music of the spheres, being in such isolation, such quietudeness or whatever, some word like that, that you can't help but respond in a particular way and be seen to be taken out of your normal experience of things. I can remember going out with a group of artists towards Tipperary and stopping one late afternoon, and it was so quiet I could hear the blood pumping around in my body. That was the only thing I could conceivably understand of what was going on. But also I could see the curvature of the earth. We were in such a flat, there was a kind of horizon 360 degrees, which is very odd. You really think you're standing on the moving earth. And you are, it's moving. It's moving around, I mean, you know. So there's all that stuff too. I mean, the more you're aware of it, the more it seeps in. I think yeah, I think your question's a really good one, but I think it seeps into you. You can only bring it out after it's been translated through paint. And translation, I don't mean just, you know, I mean translation that not only translates what was said once, but renews it in a way. So.
Idris, I'm interested in something that I've kind of only realised over the years with your work. Humour.
Yeah.
There is humour in your paintings as well.
Yeah, there is. I mean, some trees are funny. You know, they're just odd things. You know, when you really start to look at them, they are, you know, symbols of profundity and growth and aliveness, but some of them are funny. I mean, and historically artists have used that, but maybe bemused might be a better term that we could use. But yeah, I mean, there's a sense of play in painting. Trees were part of the whole history of Western landscape painting, if you're going to do landscape. But when you come out to places where there's hardly any trees all of a sudden stand out in a way which is different. For me, it comes back, the painting always comes back to the colour. I mean, that's the most abstract, still unutilised, misunderstood, emotive, whatever. It's partly me taking on metallic paint, not for, oh, this is metallic paint, isn't it groovy, but what colours it can make, and what colours haven't been made before. I mean, it's new territory. Going out to the desert meant that, unlike Matisse having to go to Morocco or set up his studio with bright material and stuff, all of a sudden I'm out in this landscape which is luminous at different times of the day, you know, red sandhills against blue sky, patches of luminous green against, you know, wonderful different reds of the desert. Man, I mean, I just thought, I don't need to go anywhere, I just go out there and there's every colour. And it's from the exuberant intensity at one level and the incredible subtlety. This stuff here, this beautiful stuff here, that was all over this. And I thought the picture was going to have this all over it, and then this landscapey thing down with a tree in it maybe. But look, it got painted out. I mean, this came across here, this was painted over all this, and then over it again. You know, things were painted out but left. You know, look at this crazy colour coming in here. I mean, it's like having a different instrument. If there's something, I guess, you know, drums, because of the physicality of them, they're a different thing than playing a violin, aren't they? Okay, well, I'm interested in violins here, and so the surface gives me, I can skid around it, I can innovate in a way which I can't do on canvas. And it forces me to respond. I have to respond quickly because it's going to dry in 15 minutes. So what I put down, it's got to be right or wrong, and I've got to make decisions. And those decisions matter in the long run, but so then you get thick bits and thin bits. Look at this. Look, that's matte, solid. That's somewhere in between, and that's like watercolour and transparent, isn't it? That's what's happening in the little works too, isn't it? That one's a bit more quirky. I think that one's finished. There's a kind of odd kind of feel of the cliffs behind the road, and those incredibly white trees. And there's a certain kind of humour in this tree on the right hand side, or a kind of beckoning kind of quality to it too, which I kind of like. I've put off going to places which are too heavily influenced by photographs or written about or whatever, but going out to Alice Springs, feeling that it's still partly home to Indigenous culture, that was great. And driving out through whatever you'd call it, extraordinary canyons and landscape and colour and stuff, that's been an extension of colour, extension of experience, a different part of the landscape.
McDonald Range.
Yeah. I mean, it's the East McDonald's too, not the West McDonald's, which is, I found, much more touristy. And the East McDonald's was less kind of painted.
Idris, have you got a title for the new show?
Empyrean, it's called. It's a wee bit obscure, but in the catalogue it's got a scattering of stars, which is part of, when I looked up the word, it's part of the root structure of how that came to be. So it's the high heavens, it's something outside our experience at one level, but at another level we're experiencing the stars. You know, that's the interesting thing about it.
Yeah.
And it's also partly descriptive of what I'm trying to deal with, which is partly the objective realism of the world. You know, where, you know, me, you, the world around us, trees, the sun, all the rest of it. But it's also the stuff outside that, and how we relate to that. And, you know, it's part of philosophy and theology, and partly from my background, where I'm continually questioning that. When I first realised many years ago that your way of making work is not free from ideology or thinking or anything else, that you just can't make art as such. because, you know, I think as Widdowson says, you know, art objects, the object objects. You know, good art does something more than just now replicate the view of the world. There's all that kind of thinking about how this portrait of landscape comes about. How do we make sense of it? And that's been an ongoing question, and that's why the title is something to do with that. I mean, it's got to do with the high heavens. It's got to do with theology and philosophy as well. So it kind of made sense because it's about the apparent contradiction of the world in which we find ourselves.